People are enemies of the stake and would rather esteem that they're an Israelite, esteem in their knowledge, versus suffering in the flesh to cease from sin, which is what we were going to read in Romans 12, and we're going to get to it in a moment. He say, who end is destruction, who Elohim is their belly, whose esteem is in their shame, who mind earthly things. Remember, he say not to be brought about with meats, and that meats for the belly and belly for the meats. So what this is talking about is carnal desires. And you have to prepare yourself and establish yourself that you are going to renounce carnal desires. This is what the master did from the jump street. And only then can you rebuild the house. See, brothers be trying to build. Remember, he said, unless you who would build the house, the builders build in vain. An individual, that's why he say, if you try to come in some other way, but by the door, you're a thief and a robber. People are trying to come in some other way. They trying to come in through the way that Hashatan set up instead of coming in through the way which Yah has set up. And that's the problem. So therefore, you can't build the house because you haven't prepared yourself to do the work. Nevertheless, Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. I just want to keep it quick, just real brief over here. Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, have Elohim said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim have said, you shall not touch it, neither you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. So to know what I'm referring to when I say that about the meats, hold on, what's up here? In Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, and it says, Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earths, and every tree, and which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed to you, it shall be for meat. So when we turn around and we look at it, you see that Hashatan in Genesis 3 is trying to move them to eat that meat instead of being blessed with the favor. What was the favor? Elohim created you, and then he gave you a wife, and he gave you a garden to it. There was nothing that Adam did to earn anything which Yah had did for him. You know what I'm saying? He breathed the breath of life into him. He gave him all the trees of the garden of which he could partake in. He gave him a place to dwell. He gave him everything that he needed, which is what Elohim is always set to do. So that's why he's telling us not to be going about, set about with meats or our desires. Because when we say meats for the belly, you got to remember down here in verse 14 that the serpent was cursed to go about his belly and to eat the dust of the field. Oh, dust shall he eat all the days of his life, meaning that he will be flesh, he will die, because that which is of the flesh shall perish. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim. You can swing back over here to Hebrews 13. So when we're looking at there about not being set apart with meat for favor and not with meats, it's us not going after vain knowledge. It's not us going after our own desires or anything that is of the flesh. This is what the adversary and his servants seek for you to do. And his servants are not just preachers, it's anybody who's outside the word. They're trying to get you to go after your carnal based desires for your own destruction. What are we at? 13 and 10. He said, we have an altar whereof they have no right to eat, which serve the tabernacle. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. Wherefore Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach. Now I want you to come over here to Isaiah 59, because you got to remember, Hamashiach was taken outside the camp. He was taken outside of Jerusalem to Jessamine, and that's where he was laid in the middle of the street, suffering the reproach or the dishonor of sin. Why? Because we're going to finish it in John 10. He prepared himself. He said he laid his life down for the sheep. He had already prepared himself to suffer in the aspects of rebuilding this house. So if we turn around and we look at that, we want to be rebuilt in the image of Elohim, then we have to prepare ourselves to die. And this is what nobody is preparing themselves to do. Therefore, you can't rebuild the house. And we're going to look at just a few things in the tabernacle of witness that bear witness to that suffering that has to be partook in to you can rebuild this house. That's why he say prepare the worker without or outside the street or outside the realm of sinners and transgressors. Separate yourself from them. Isaiah 59 and 14, if I'm not mistaken. Isaiah 59 and 14. Actually, yeah, right on the head, but we'll drop down to about verse 10, if y'all don't mind, about verse 10. I still got about 30 more minutes with y'all, man, so I'm going to try to fit it all in. Oh. He said, we grope for the wall. Make it 9. I'll say 8. Make it even 7. He said, their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity, wasted in destruction are in their paths. And this is what ends up happening when you meats for the belly. Because at the end of the day, that's what Hashatan did to them in the garden. That was innocent blood that they spilled. This is why John 8 and 44, he called him a murderer. Because he hated his brother in his heart. He didn't rebuke his brother for sin. He went for the exact reason to destroy his brother. That's what he was out to do. You have to be wary of that and understand that there are people who will go about to establish yourselves not with the favor of Elohim, which is the blood of Mashiach for the salvation of your soul, but to try to get you to go about with your desires. This is why Proverbs 1 tell you, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. That's another thing why it's always wise to know and be aware of things before you make judgments and make moves. He said, therefore is judgment far from us, neither doth justice overtake us. I'm sorry, I did not read verse 8. The way of shalom they know not, and there's no judgment in their goings. They have made them crooked paths. Whosoever go therein shall not know shalom. So listen what he tell you. He said they haven't known shalom. Remember what Isaiah 57 and 21 tell you. There's no shalom for the wicked. So you can't destroy the authority, attack the chaos. You cannot destroy sin in you if you're wicked. I'm going to show you why. Hold this Isaiah 59 and let's go to John 9. I ain't going to get off track too tough, but I got to do it. Y'all know how we do. Praise the Lamb. Praise Yah for Yahusha. Just got to get some understanding so we know that this man said the way of shalom they haven't known. So they don't have any judgment in their movements. So they make them crooked paths, and whoever go therein will not know shalom. So when we have to look at that, huh?
Yeah, where exactly we was just at, huh?
That was Isaiah 59 and 7. We stopped at verse 8. We read verses 7 and 8.
Okay, my bad. I started at 10. I'm like, hold up.
Ah, nah, you good. You good. Yeah, you good. So we in John 9 and 39 now.
Right.
No, because I think I did mention 10 and I just kept going up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you good. So it says, Yahushua said, for judgment I am coming to this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words, and said unto him, are we blind also? Yahushua said unto them, if you were blind, you should have no sin. But now ye say we see, therefore your sin remain. See, that's the thing that get a lot of dudes. A lot of time people sit back and say, I'm straight. I know what I'm doing. I got it. This, that, there, and the third. And it shows that their sin remains, because if they said they didn't see, then their sin would not remain. But see, then he said their way of shalom they have not known. He said they haven't known it, so their judgments are off. So let's look at John 1 and let's see something that he said. And after that, Matthew 22. Let's look at John 1 and verse 4. And it says, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shined in darkness, and the darkness comprehended not. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was Yachanan. The same came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which light every man that come into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. So it's telling you, they didn't know the way of shalom. Hamashiach told us in John 14 and 4, he is the way, the life, and the truth. You know what I'm saying? He said, come unto me, all ye that labor, and I will give you rest. He is the way to destroy the authority attached to chaos if you will prepare yourself for the work and make yourself ready. Now, we talked about that on Pentecost. When you sit back and you purge yourself to make yourself a vessel meet for the master's use, it's because you prepared yourself to be able to be used. And to prepare yourself to be able to be used, you're fleeing youthful lust, and you're walking in shalom, you're walking in righteousness, you're walking in faith, you're walking in the love of Elohim, the love of your neighbor. You're doing all the things that are right and just before Yahuwah. People don't, the worst thing in the world for anybody is to learn the truth. And when he say to learn the truth, that is to hear Yahushua HaMashiach and then turn and go commit multiple willful rebellious sins. That man say it's better for you to have never have known this than to know it and return to your vomit. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, since I said that, 2 Peter chapter 2. And we come right back to Matthew 22. We finish in John chapter 1. Second Peter chapter 2, verse 20. Matter of fact, make it by 18. Because this is talking about those who don't know the way of shalom, so they don't have no judgment in their goings. And because they don't have any judgment in their goings, they've made crooked paths, and whoever follows behind them will not know shalom. They won't know Mashiach. They won't know their rest. If you follow, that's why he say the scribes and Pharisees are not seeking it to enter in, nor are they allowing anyone else to enter in. Because all the scribes and Pharisees, and just like the priests and wicked men before them, all they cared about was the praise of men. So they didn't really care for the people. Hi, Lizzie. Lizzie, don't kick your shoes off in here. Take them shoes back where you got them from. Okay? Can you take your shoe off? Go put your shoes up, Elizabeth. Thank you, Lizzie. Do you like your shoes? You like your shoes, Lizzie? Lizzie, go put your shoes up. You trying to get the dirt out? But don't throw it on your mommy's carpet. Go up front with it. She's not listening. Nevertheless, verse 18, 2 Peter chapter 2. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lust of the flesh. This is how their paths are crooked. Through much wantonness, those that were clean escape from them who live in error. While they promise them freedom, they themselves are the servants of corruption, for whom a man is overcome, of the same as he brought in bondage. For if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of our Master and Savior Yahushua HaMashiach, and they are entangled therein and overcome, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. For it had been better for them to not have known the way of righteousness, than after they have known it, to turn from the Kadesh commandment delivered unto them. But it has happened unto them according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the soul that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. You know how bad it is if you wash yourself and then turn around and get right back in the mud. That's why he said in Songs of Solomon, he say, I wash my hands, how should I defile them? How should I cleanse myself through the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, the washing of water by the word, that he might sanctify it, that he might make it a blameless house, without spot, wrinkle, and blemish, and then go back and defile it. This is why you have to prepare yourself for the work without. You got to prepare yourself to go outside the camp and suffer and bear his reproach, to bear that sin, to bear that dishonor that he wore. He said, the reproaches of them that reproach thee fell on me, that the strong ought to support the weak. This is what he did. You supposed to follow his pathway, because they say they see, their sin remains, because they have not known the way of shalom. Therefore, their paths are crooked, and they can't know it. Let's look at Matthew 22 real fast. Therefore, anybody who walks and follows behind them can't know it. That nigga walking like a real gardener. 22 and 41. That nigga just walked in here like a real gardener. While the Pharisees were gathered together, Yahushua asked them, saying, what you think of ye of Mashiach? Whose son is he? They say unto him, the son of David. He saith unto them, how then doth David and Ruach call him master, saying, Yahuwah said unto my master, sit thou on my right hand till I make thy enemies thy footstool. If David then shall call him master, now how is he his son? And no man was able to answer him a word, neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions. And there's other places where they didn't know who he was. They didn't know the way of shalom. They didn't know that he was the way to destroy sin. So because they didn't know it, they couldn't walk in it, and their paths remained crooked. Consider that. That's what Peter was basically telling you in 2 Peter chapter 2. Back to Isaiah 59. I gotta crank it up a bit. It's 8:24. I still ain't getting everything I need to hit. We in verse what? 9. Therefore judgment is far from us, neither doth justice overtake us. We wait for light, but hold obscurity for brightness, but we walk in darkness. Which he made it go dark. We grope for the wall like the blind. We grope as it we had no eyes. We stumble at noonday as in the night. We are in desolate places as dead men. We were all like bears and mourn sore like doves. We look for judgment, but there is none. For salvation, but it is far from us. For our transgressions are multiplied before thee, and our sins testify against us. For our transgressions are with us, and as for our iniquities, we know them. And transgressing and lying against Yahuwah, this is what they did. They transgressed against Mashiach. They lied on him, brought false witnesses. They did all of that. And departing away from our Elohim, speaking oppression and revolt, conceiving and uttering from the heart words of falsehood. And judgment is turned away backwards, and justice stand afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. And that's how he's fallen in the street. So prepare thyself without or in the street. So you have to prepare yourself to go outside the camp to suffer with Mashiach, or to suffer from sins, to suffer in the flesh, to cease from sin as he suffered. He prepared himself. Back to John chapter 10. Let's get this Romans 12. Boy, calm it down, boy. Calm it down. Get your feet off that table. Romans 12 and 1. Come here, Elizabeth. Come here, Elizabeth. Come here, Lizzie. Come here, Lizzie. Come here, Lizzie. Romans 12 and 1. Come here, Lizzie.
Y'all going on a walk?
It said, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, Kadesh, acceptable unto Elohim, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. Got to be willing to offer yourself as a living sacrifice. If you offer yourself as a living sacrifice, it's because you have prepared yourself. Let's look at back to John chapter 10. Back to John 10. We stopped at verse 11. I'm going to read verse 11. And then we're going to drop to verse 15. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. Verse 15. Verse 14, matter of fact. I am the good shepherd and know my sheep and am known of mine. As the Father know me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it again. No man take it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down. I have power to take it again. This commandment I have received of my Father. Remember, he said, no greater love have no man than this, that a man lay his life down for his friends. You have to be willing to lay your life down. But in order to lay your life down, you have to be prepared. How do you prepare yourself? Let's see. Romans chapter 10. And after that, Luke 24. Romans 10 and 14. 10 and 13. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Master shall be saved. How then shall they call on him whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? How shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the Besorah of Shalom and bring glad tidings of good things. Remember, that's the way of Shalom. They haven't known it. Therefore, their judgment is off. But they have not all obeyed and bring glad tidings and good things, for they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Yeshayahu saith Yahuwah, who have believed our report. So then faith come by hearing, and hearing come by the word of Elohim. So then we're thrown over here to Luke 24 and 25. And then when we look at this, we begin to see this is how you prepare yourself for the work without. Because before you can even make that decision, you have to hear the word. Once you hear the word, then we'll go to Romans 6. Then we'll swing back to Exodus 25. No, don't even hit Romans 6. We'll go to Exodus 25.
How y'all doing? What you talking about, mama? Yeah. Oh yeah.
What it is? What I mentioned? Hey, Liz. What did I just mention? What did I just say, Akira?
24 and 25.
Yeah, Luke 24. You want to read the book? Okay, I'm finna read it, okay? Can you read it? Luke 24 and 25. Then said he unto them, O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Mashiach to have suffered these things and to enter into his... Leave them things alone, girl. And to enter his... Leave it alone, Lizzie. Lizzie, no. 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 And to enter into his esteem. At beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures of things concerning himself. Drop on the 44 then. And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you, I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the Torah of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. Then he opened their understanding, that they might understand the scriptures. And he said unto them, Thus it is written, and thus it behooved Mashiach to suffer, and to rise from the dead the third day. So, what do I want to use? Let's look at 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 1. No, 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 21 is better. Because I done reference 1 Peter chapter 4 at least 4 times. 1 Peter 2 and 19. So when we sit back and you look at it, right, he said it was good for Mashiach to suffer. He had to suffer to enter his esteem, which means he had already heard that word and prepared himself to die. You have to make preparations to die. That's why he told you take up your stake and follow him. He said if you're not able to take up your stake daily, you can't be his disciple. That's why he told you to sit down and count the cost. You sitting down and counting the cost by hearing the word and saying you have sufficient to pay. He said, are you able to be immersed with the immersion that I'm immersed with? And to drink from the cup that I drink from? They said, we are able. You got to sit down and prepare yourself in your heart and mind to go to war and to do this. And that comes from hearing the word. And once you hear the word, then after you've prepared yourself to go outside the camp and suffer the reproach, then you can rebuild the house. 1 Peter 2 and 19. For this is thankworthy if a man for conscience towards Elohim endure grief suffering wrongfully. For what esteem is it when you be buffeted for your faults, you shall take it patiently. But if when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with Elohim. For even hereunto were ye called, because Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. And when he was reviled not again, and when he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously, who his own self bare our own sins in his own body on the tree, that we being dead to sin should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. For you were as sheep going astray, but now are returned unto the shepherd and bishop of your souls. So you follow the example of him dying. To follow that example, you would have to learn of him. You would have to know of him to prepare your heart for that work. Exodus chapter 25. I ain't gonna always be seeing I be running out of time. I don't be trying to go too late on Wednesdays. When we look at the offering which ye shall take of them of gold and silver and brass, we're going to look at the gold and silver. This is Exodus chapter 23. So let's look at that offering of silver first. Isaiah 48 and then Revelation chapter 3. I just got to make it brief. I can go with this so much longer, and I don't really want to keep y'all too long. Isaiah 48. Isaiah 48 and 10. Make it Isaiah 48 and 7. Or 48 and 8. He said, yea, thou heard not, yea, thou knew not. Yea, from the time that thy ear was not open, for I knew that thou would deal very treacherously, and was called a transgressor from the womb. See, he already knew that they were going to slay the son. The son was slain from the foundation of the world, because he said in John 10 and 25, he said, I told you who I was, and you believe me not. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. He said their ear was not open. He told you that when he said if they had eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to understand, then they could be converted and healed.
So you already walked pretty far?
So he already know that they would treacherously portray this man. He said, for my name's sake will I defer my anger, and for my praise will I refrain from thee, that I cut thee not off. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. See, I think in Psalm chapter 12, it tell you the words of Yahuwah are like refined silver. So it was the sufferings. Because that gold is a free will offering, and that silver is a free will offering brought into the house. The gold is refined when it's brought through the fire and it's made pure. And this is what happens when you're offering yourself as a living sacrifice. Then you can begin to rebuild the house. Let's look at Revelation 3 and 19. Or 3 and 17. He said, because thou say I am rich and increase with goods and have need of nothing, and know not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou may be rich, and white raiment, that thou may be clothed, that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thy eyes with alcohol, that thou may see. So think about that.
You got married on the 20th?
The fire is what purges you. The fire is what makes you clean, and that's what you got to bring in. So then he say the blue, the purple, the scarlet, the fine linen, and ram skin dyed red, and badger skin, and shittim wood. Well, let's see what this shittim wood would be. Let's come over here to Luke chapter 9.
I'm assuming he found a girl that he could marry. Him and D. I don't know. She's still in the truth though. That's what my shit is saying, but they not together. Okay.
What is it? Luke 9 and what is it? 24 or 23? Well, we'll start about 18. And it came to pass as he was alone praying, his disciples were with him, and he asked them, saying, whom say the people that I am? They answering said, Yachanan their mercer, but some say Elijah. Others say that one of the old prophets is risen again. He saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? Peter answering said, the Mashiach Elohim. He straightly charged them and commanded them to tell no man that thing, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be slain, and be raised the third day. And he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his stake daily, and follow him. So if shittim wood is going to be in this house, then you have to sit back and look at to prepare yourself, because this tabernacle of witness is preparation for the temple that Solomon would build. That's what you got to understand. This is a preparation for the temple that Solomon would build. Everything that's in the temple that Solomon would build is in this tabernacle of witness. So you need to have that shittim wood, or you need to take up your stake and suffer. That's why Paul said many are enemies of the stake. That ram skin dyed red. Let's look at that Hebrew chapter 9, and you'll see what that ram skin dyed red. Knowing that he had a ram in the bush in Genesis 22, in the thorns, symbolizing Mashiach.
That's crazy. That was the day you killed it. You left it in there? I'm not gonna open the window. You can't hear it. Ain't gonna tell it.
9 and 13, or 9 and 11. He said, but Mashiach being come a high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the Kadesh place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctify the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Mashiach... Hold on, bro, they can hear you, might have to mute your phone. He said, how much more shall the blood of Mashiach, who through the eternal Ruach offered himself throughout spot to Elohim, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. So when you got to bring in the house, you got to bring in the blood. You have to be covered by it. The blood has, you have to have your tokens of virginity or the blood on the napkin or this man's blood upon the doorpost of your soul. You have to prepare yourself without. He also said you need to have oil for light. Well, he say in him was the light, and the light was the light for men. Let's look at 1 John 2 and 27, and another thing that you need to bring to sit back and remember how we get that. He say, he that believe on me, as the scripture I have said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. This spake he of the Ruach HaKadosh, which those that believed on him should receive. So you need the Ruach for light. And I go back to the parable in Matthew 25 with the virgins who didn't have oil to trim their lamps. They didn't have any Ruach, therefore they couldn't get in the house. They couldn't come into the marriage feast. 1 John 2 and 27. Really it's about 2 and 24. He said, let therefore abide in you which you have heard from the beginning, and that which you have heard from the beginning shall remain in you, and you shall also continue in the Son and in the Father. This is the promise that he hath promised us, even eternal life. These things have I written unto you concerning them that seduce you. But the anointing which you have received of him abide in you, and you need not that any man teach you. But as the same anointing teach you of all things and is truth, and is no lie, even it has taught you, you shall abide in him. And now, little children, abide in him, that when he shall appear we may have confidence, and not be ashamed before him at his coming. If you know that he is righteous, you know that everyone that do righteousness is born of him. You have to sit back and look at it. If you see people doing things that are not right, and the book says all unrighteousness is sin, then you know that they are not born of Elohim, because those that are born of Elohim will do the things that are right. If you see someone with a consistent pattern of behavior of doing the things that are wrong, then they haven't prepared themselves without to rebuild the house, because all preparing yourself without to rebuild the house is pointing to you being born again. Being turned from flesh to ruach, from a natural man to a spiritual man, or to a son of Elohim, from the first Adam to the second Adam. This is what it's telling you about when it's telling you to then build your house or rebuild. So you have to destroy the old man and rebuild a new one. But in order to destroy the old man and rebuild a new one, you have to prepare yourself, which is the hearing of the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, and willingly offer yourself to die. Because everything in the tabernacle, everything in the temple points to him. Like I said, we went over this before, so I ain't trying to go into the great detail. So when he say let them make them a sanctuary, then you have to do it according to the pattern that he showed you. So let's look at John 14. That's why why do you think Mashiach kept telling you to follow him, follow him, follow him, follow him, follow him, follow him, follow him? You got to follow him. You know what? I got something because I'm about to wrap it up. Because I ain't finna keep you too long. I'm about to wrap it up. 14 and 4, John. Well, 14 and 5, Thomas saith unto him, Master, we know not whither thou go, and how can we know the way? Yahushua saith unto them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man come unto the Father but by me. And if you had known me, you should have known my Father also. And from henceforth you know him and have seen him. You notice again, he said the scribes and Pharisees had not known the way of Shalom, therefore their paths were crooked and their judgment was off. And those who walk therein could never know it. He was telling them they knew because they were with him. And they saw him and they knew him, because he is that pathway, and you have to follow that pathway or that pattern. And Romans 8, it tells you you must be conformed into the image of the Son. You must, Romans chapter 13. Hello? Hello?
Hey, Sam.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
All right. Romans 13 in 8. And 8. Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that love another hath fulfilled the Torah. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love work no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the Torah. So, if you got love in your heart according to the word, then you shouldn't be doing or speaking evil of any man falsely. It says, and that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than we believed. For the night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strifing and envying. So if you walking in the day, you ain't got no business out here wilding. You ain't got no business drunk. You ain't got no business lusting. You ain't got no business envying, and you ain't got no business having no strifing nobody unjustly. If you walking in the day, if you walking in the sun, because you will be walking in the pattern, which is what we read in 1 Peter chapter 2. Follow his footsteps. Are you walking in the pattern of the tabernacle as he showed you? But put ye on the Master Yahushua HaMashiach and make no provisions for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. He told you plainly, he say, put off the old man and put on the new man, which is created after righteousness. You can't put off that old man until you have prepared yourself. And you can't prepare yourself till you heard the word. If you say you heard the word and you prepared yourself and you still walking in the flesh, you lied. You spoke presumptuously, and that can be dangerous to your soul. Very, very dangerous to your soul. Nevertheless, so we need to go about to prepare a tabernacle for this, a sanctuary for him to dwell. Let's look at that in this aspect. In Romans chapter 6, I'm finna ready to write this up. In Romans chapter 6, right? And I guess I'm going to have to continue this on the Shabbat with the rebuilding part. In Romans chapter 6, he said that you die with Mashiach and to be resurrected in Mashiach, right? So now you've put on the Son and you've put off the works of the flesh to walk in righteousness and be quickened. So when we see in this rebuild, you're looking at the rebuilding or the resurrection from the dead that Mashiach took on, because he said, destroy this tabernacle, this temple, and I'll raise it up in 3 days. So after he prepared himself for the work and suffered without, then he resurrected from the dead and he rebuilt the house. And this is what this is showing us. That's why he said you must be born again. So you have to prepare yourself without, or make yourself ready, firmly establish yourself, hear the gospel, believe the gospel, walk in the gospel, walk outside the camp to suffer the reproach of Yahushua and to bear it, and then you can be rebuilt and become a son or daughter of the living Elohim. That is the objective. And the key point of what I didn't get to tonight, and I'll show it scripturally, y'all willing, on the Shabbat, is inside the tabernacle of witness, inside the temple, was the Ark of the Covenant. And the Kadesh of the Kadesh, in the center of the house. And inside that Ark of the Covenant was nothing other than the tables of stone, or the covenant in itself. And that's the establishing of the pattern. That Yahushua was symbolic of the temple. And what was in his heart, what it said in Psalms 40. Lo, it's written of me. You know what I'm saying? He said, and let me get it right here. Psalm 40. I don't want to quote it, man. Wrong. That's what we're going to end it at. I know I reference in script to you, but most high willing, I'm going to get you on the Shabbat. I got a whole bunch of stuff, man. I be having too much stuff in my head, and I be underestimating how much time we got to hit it. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me. I delight to do thy will, O my Elohim, yea, thy Torah is within my heart. So knowing that the Ark of the covenant bears witness of Mashiach, and that covenant is in that Ark, and that Ark is in the center of the house, and the new covenant is the law written in your heart and in your inward parts, and you are the house. Let's get that. 1 Corinthians 3 and 15. And it will and peeled out. 1 Corinthians 3 and 15. 3 and 16. Know ye not that you are the temple of Elohim, and that the Ruach of Elohim dwell in you? If any man defile the temple of Elohim, him shall Elohim destroy. For the temple of Elohim is Kadesh, which temple ye are. And we'll look at that most high willing on the Shabbat, because Hamashiach defiled the temple of Elohim. That's why he destroyed him. And that's why he had to destroy him, so he could rebuild him, for preparing himself without, so that he could rebuild that house. So knowing that we must destroy the old man and all the things that came with him, the sins, the lust, the worldly thought process, everything that comes along with it, it must be destroyed so you can rebuild that house, and it be built into the image of the living Elohim. But hallelujah for Yahushua. We stop right there because I can't go too long on no Wednesday.